in the spotlight. We've got one of the really, I'd say probably one of the top trainers, and obviously you're going to say the top trainer in the UK.
I'm going to leave that for you, someone else to say.
No, I'm going to give you your credit because I've spoken to several people that are in the boxing scene. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel to Shane McGuigan. Last time he was here, I accused him of training a fighter that he didn't train, and then I thought I can't speak to him again. It was a long time ago. Matchroom cards. Anthony Fowler.
I can't remember it, but we'll start afresh.
We'll start afresh. What I will say is that I've spoken to a few fighters and a few people that are around your gym, not necessarily in the gym, and they say about your style of training. One of the things that they do say about you is how you're able to adapt to every single fighter and you don't have this uniform style of training. Talk to us a little bit about that, Shane.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I try not to do. I try and make sure I work with people on their strengths and obviously work towards, strengthening their weaknesses, but, not trying to conform them into a specific style because not everyone's that way inclined, One thing I would say is someone like Chris Billam-Smith, whenever he turned professional with me, he was a complete back foot boxer. And now he's gone the other way, but he's much more comfortable. He gets hit less on the front foot. So just working with the athlete that you're with, and over time you realise what they do good and what they do, not so well. And just trying to make sure you can maximise them as individuals because short career, it can be over in the blink of an eye, and you can have a lot of bad ingrained habits from the amateurs, and it's a very different game. So that's one of the things I try and work on, try and make sure I'm working towards their strengths.
We talk about working towards strengths. When did you realise, what was it with you, Shane, that you thought, you know what, I'm going to train fighters, I enjoy doing it. Yeah. I'm gonna test my boundaries, see what I can do, see what my limits, if I have any, what they are.
I love the strength and conditioning and the nutrition side because when I was boxing myself, I was really struggling. I was always dieting, always no strength, and I didn't have an extensive amateur career. I had less than 40 fights, but I had enough to know what it feels like when you go through training camps and go towards tournaments and feel exhausted and weak. And I think it was like 2009, 2010, it was that switch where people were starting to do a bit more weight training and a bit more, nutrition was becoming a bit more specific. It was not just eat less, you're able to eat a lot more. And I think I was fascinated with how you can maximize your athletic potential. I don't think I ever really did that, you know what I mean? Learning energy systems and stuff like that. Next thing you know, I'm working with a fighter that I used to train, used to box in tournaments with, and it just all went together, and he became a 2-8 world champion, and other fighters rolled in after that, and it's nice to make the first one a success story, but there's other. Chris Billam-Smith's going to be defending his world title in 3 weeks' time, and for me, that's probably my biggest success story after the 12 or 13 years working as a coach. So hopefully Azim wins on Saturday night as well and becomes a European champion. Is one of the quickest ever to do it. So we're trying to break bounds and also trying to challenge ourselves on a daily basis. And when you're around like-minded individuals, you're always striving for more. And I think I've got that in the gym. So
you've mentioned there. And it's after how many years you've been a trainer, it's like almost, there's a personal touch to it. Fair enough, it's your job, it's what you do. But it's like the fact that you've built a fighter, helped that fighter get to that stage where they're a world champion. I mean, what does that mean to a trainer?
It's everything. You set off, and I've had fighters that I've started, like Chris started from the amateurs, and Josh Taylor straight from the amateurs have become world champions, or in Josh's case, a unified world champion. And to see them do it, it's amazing. And people only see 36 minutes or less, but they don't see the months on end of grafting and training, and they also don't see the years before they get to that level, because no one really pays much unless they're like a really decorated amateur like AJ or Ben Whittaker or someone like that coming out of the amateurs. Everyone's raving about them. Most of the time they're not, even if they're on GB, they're not that well known. So then they got to build a fan base, and people, maybe 6-7 fights on, there might be 10-15 fights on, or someone like Tyler Denny, he's just about to fight for a European title. He's done all of those years beforehand that people aren't acknowledging, and that as a trainer is what it's what makes the the wins at the top end, whatever their level and limit is, it's what makes them the sweet ones.
Sweet ones, you touch on that, and I know Chris Billam-Smith is sort of like your baby. We spoke off camera last time. He sort of wasn't going to be in your gym, but you took him on anyway. Let our viewers know a little bit about that story.
Yeah, I think at the time I had David Hay in the gym. I had George Groves, Carl Frampton. I had Josh Taylor as a prospect coming through. Pretty sure I had Chantel Cameron, who's now undisputed. So I had a booming gym, and Chris and Lee McGregor, both, I signed them both at the same time, but they were both Lee was on GB and Chris wasn't. He got to the elites finals and there or thereabouts, lost to Chevron Clark, lost to people like Vidal Riley, and didn't get a look in when Lawrence Okoli got picked for the Olympics and things like that. And I think he went on about 3 or 4 GB trials, and they didn't really see the potential. And I'm not saying I necessarily instantly saw it, because I used to bring him down to spar David Hay and Groves, and he would jump in and out for rounds, but I liked him. I thought he's a real nice guy. And I think I had a lot of egos in the gym, and I had a lot of people that were established fighters and and knew their worth, as it were. And I think for myself, I was thinking it's great, but it's also challenging to manage different types of personalities throughout the day. And a person I was with actually said, like, why don't you think about, he's a lovely kid, why don't you think about taking him on? And next thing you know, I thought, do you know what, why not? I'll take him on. He's a real nice guy, and the expectation's not as much as the other fighters. And he's here, he's come up to that would have been over 7 years ago now, and now he's a world champion, defending his world title live on Sky Sports as a headline for the 3rd time. And that's not every story is going to be as sweet as that one, but it's one that you really relish it and appreciate it.
You've mentioned something there, egos in the gym. What is it like when you've got all of those different personalities, world champions, people with that boxing status, everyone knows who they are?
Yeah.
How does that change in the gym, or how do you manage it in there?
Well, a fighter needs a certain type of ego. It's not necessarily a negative trait. It's a good thing. They need to be able to have that confidence and inner belief, and they have to be a little bit egotistical to be able to voice their opinions on the big stage and tell everyone how great they are. Because you've got to speak it, and other people will start listening over time. And if you're good enough, you can back it up. So, but it's just personality types, really. I mean, it's different types of personality types. And when they start making money, they're happy when they're like, they're not, their prospects are not making any money. Then they become world champion or there or thereabouts, and then they want to dictate the times that they train in, and they want to dictate where they want to go abroad or train here or train there. It's like, well, what happens to all of the other people that are where you were 3 years ago or 4 years ago? And that's something that I've had to. It's happened multiple times throughout my career. I've had people like Lawrence win world titles and suddenly think he wants everyone to change to his ways, and and other fighters that might not have won world titles but made a lot of money and done the same thing. But really, it's a bit like any established gym, like the Ingles gym or myself or Gallagher's or wherever it is. Like, that's the home, that's the hub, that's what creates the champions, and that environment is solidified there. Whether it, and you make that environment over time. Fighters come through, and yes, they might have the talent, but the gym is helping develop the talent, and it has to stand still. It has to be there. And obviously, if there's a fight that you're going abroad for, potentially boxing in Vegas or something, you take a training camp there for 4 weeks. But you don't just uplift the gym every 2 seconds because you want to go out and train in the sun, or because you feel like you want that as a world champion. And that's a good thing about having that relationship with someone like Chris. Like, he knows that gym helped make him, and he understands it's helping make the next ones, like Ellie Scottney and Caroline and Adam and Hassan and people like that. So that's about it, really. It just you got to learn to manage it and also relate to people.
Forgive my ignorance, I didn't realise that you had so many even retired stars in your gym. So what happens then when your fighter says, I've got a bit of money, I want to move, I want to do this, but I still want you to be my trainer in the UK, and then I don't know, the relationship starts to fizzle apart. I mean, your words, your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. Everyone's got their own, their own story, and it's a short career. You can't hold grudges on someone for wanting to do a specific thing. It has to work for me as well. Do you know what I mean? And when you have a lot of responsibilities, whether it's a family or, like I've got a young son, like you have responsibilities. You can't just uplift everything and go away for months on end. You can, of course, if it's a big enough fight, and you make it work. But if it's just for meaningless, training camps or whatever, and money can shift a fighter as well, and titles can shift a fighter. Whether someone wins a world title, if someone sets their expectations on just becoming a world champion their whole life, they win it. I've had fighters win world titles and ring me on a Saturday and ring me on the Tuesday, Wednesday, and say, like, I thought it'd have felt different, because a lot of the time they've set that goal up and they've achieved it, and they thought, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to get paraded around and feel like there's God. But then next thing you know, like, you say, okay, we'll set some new goals. You set a new goal, and then you win a world title. You might unify it. Then you get that sense of satisfaction, or sometimes it can be money. And you just got to learn to know their triggers. As a coach, you need to know their triggers, because when it gets tough, 8-9 rounds in, and you got 3 rounds and it's in the balance, you got to be able to give the instructions in that 60 seconds to help them win fights.
The curious side of me wants to go back to when obviously the fight was announced with Lawrence Okolie and Chris Billam-Smith for Chris to challenge him for the belt. I spoke to Richard Riakpo, and Richard said it's probably the worst fight for Lawrence to have, because obviously you being his former trainer, you know him. But in your camp, when you were getting ready and you saw the fight on the night, could you have literally predicted that?
Yes, but I also knew how good Lawrence Okolie is, and I knew what he did really well, and I knew what Chris, sometimes switches off, and I knew that physically Lawrence is very good at imposing himself, and Chris has sparred multiple rounds with him. So as Richard said, just in sparring, that you're not going to get success. A lot of people, they get like, they look at Lawrence and think, do you know what, I'm just going to move my head, get in close and manhandle him. But that's his best asset, is his strength on the inside. He might look like his punching power is his best asset, but not really. He's heavy-handed, but he's not like explosive power. He's thumpy, and he's a little bit, he telegraphs it a little bit, but really his best asset is his inside ability to tie people up and tire people. He tires people, then he knocks them out when they're tired. He doesn't unless it's been a couple of times he's knocked guys out cold, but early on in the fights. But most of the time he drains them, and then he comes, he gets the success after they're pre-fatigued. So, ourselves working, we're doing so many rounds of Lawrence, and me as a coach training him, I know what he does right and wrong, and I know where he loses his positions and stuff like that. So, but it's all down to the athlete to be able to go out there and execute it in those 36 minutes. It's you can talk it, you can think about it, you can remember the sparring, but everyone's a little bit different on fight night. They might have that extra 5-10%, and that can be the difference. In Lawrence's case, he didn't realize Chris had an extra 5-10%. Chris doesn't really try a lot sometimes in sparring. He works on things, and Lawrence spars to win every round. He thinks that's his mentality. He's like, I've got to win every spar, and so he's probably going into it thinking, well, I can handle him in sparring, but there's 18s on, there's head guards on, he's more comfortable there's not a crowd. I knew all of these factors were going to play into Chris Billam-Smith's hands, but there's still that unknown that thinks maybe if he does hit Chris with a 10-ounce gloves on, he knocks him out or he hurts him. But we managed to be right on that one.
Chris takes on Matthias Masternak to get my words out there. I spoke to him at the presser that you had the other day, alongside obviously speaking to Chris. Masternak said he's been doing this for 17 years, and it means so much to him to get this shot. That hunger almost brought him to tears when we spoke. He had to take a breath and think about it, because it was like, this is his time. I've put that question back to Chris, and Chris says, I get it. I wasn't emotional like him, but I get the importance of wanting to win that. Now Chris is defending. How do you have to prepare his mindset for going in for somebody that is as hungry as he was when he wanted to win the belt?
But that I think one thing I would say is sometimes people slip when they win world titles, especially when people are they talked about to win a world title. It's like Adam Azim or Caroline's like, she's going to win a world title. Adam's going to win a world title. The talent and the effort, you think like, yeah, they're going to get there. It's just a matter of time. And, sometimes they can slip up on the way, but because their sights are so far ahead. But for Chris, it was like, yeah, over this little mini hurdle, we got there. Let's set that next hurdle. We're going to get there. And he was never touted to win a world title. He couldn't get on GB. So, a lot of people just instantly wrote him off. But he's chipped away. He's got there over time, and he loves proving people wrong. So, that's why he gets Masternak. He understands that really, if Chris was matched hard and turned pro as early as Masternak, because Masternak and Chris, there's only 3 years difference. One's been pro 17 years and the other's been pro 7. So really, the difference is because Chris, if he'd have turned pro the same time that Masternak turned pro, you know what I mean? It would have been 13 years or as a pro. So and then he would have then lost certain fights because he'd been through in it deep and he wasn't quite ready for it, mentally, physically mature enough for it. So Chris gets it. He understands that Masternak's a guy that preserves his body. He lives a life. He's absolutely hard as nails, and he's taken everything from the losses, and he's still performing at 36 years of age because he lives it. So, but he also understands that if his career had been managed differently, or if he'd had turned pro and not got the right advice and training, he could have easily not reached anywhere near the same level, or if he did reach it, he would have had to reach it much later with a lot more miles and stuff on the clock. So I just think with Chris's mentality, I don't think he's the kind of guy that he will ever slip up, because he knows he knows that he's worked so hard to get here, and he's not going to take it. He knows how good Masternak is. That's another thing. He knew how good Lawrence was. He gives everyone the respect. A lot of people don't give that respect. So then he trains that a little bit harder. So I've just been on the phone to him literally before you asked me, before we talked about the interview, and he was just done 10 rounds of sparring. So he's buzzing.
Listen, I can't wait for that fight because I know it's going to be a good fight. I know both of them are good fighters, and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, exactly. It can't not be a good fight. I mean, Chris is just in wars all the time, so that's the way he wins fights. And I think it's like a calculated risk. But with Masternak, he's hard as nails, takes good chin. Takes good shot, good chin. Sets a reasonably high pace as well, so throws lots of punches. It can't not be a good fight.
Chris has got the world at his feet. He's a world champion. He's in a position of choices. He's taking a voluntary with Masternak, and then he's got options. The options are there's a rematch with Lawrence Okoli that was written into his contract, his new extended contract. We saw that, and then there's obviously Richard Riakporhe that's got into mandatory. You as his trainer, who would you prefer to see Chris fight out of those pair?
I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I think for us, it's just they make the most sense in this in terms of Chris wants to avenge the loss against Richard. It was a split decision. Richard feels he's got better. Chris feels he's got a lot better. So the two of them, should fight definitely. And the beauty of it is that one of them's got a world title. The only frustrating thing for Chris's mindset is, if Chris had been in Richard Riakporhe's position, he would have took the tail fight. He would have took the Goulamarian fight. That's the truth. We were going to sign a contract for Goulamarian 2 or 3 days before we signed a contract for Lawrence Okoli. He didn't matter who he was boxing. He wanted to fight for a world title. So that's his mentality. And Richards is not. Richards stands back. Nice guy, good fighter. Stands back, waiting on the right opportunity, waiting on a weak link in his eyes. And he sees Chris as that weak link. But to really get the recognition that he craves, he should take any if you are good enough, you take any opportunity. That's the truth, and he hasn't done it. So, you know, that's the only thing that grinds Chris's gears a little bit, because he wants to avenge it with him as a world champion, and he easily has the opportunity to do that. They have Billam-Smith that they can make a fight tomorrow with, but they're not doing it, you know, and it's because he wants Chris, but he should make it a bigger fight and go and win a world title, and then make it a unification.
It's interesting that you say that, because it's a different perspective again, because obviously we're aware that obviously Billam-Smith was tied up in some legal entanglement, one for a better word. That's why that fight didn't happen, and obviously the JR Pattaya.
But it was going to happen with Chris. Wow. So, you know, I don't think there's anything that can't be resolved. You know what I mean? If that's the way you got to look at it. Like, it surely could be resolved. And if there's enough interest and enough money on the table, which there should be with the platform behind them, then, Chris would probably say, all right, we'll take less then. I'll take a bit less. He didn't take like a crazy purse against Lawrence Okoli, but he got the fight, he got the win. So like, he's happy to take, he sold 14,500 tickets, so that event made a lot of money. But he knew that was his dream, to win a world title in that stadium, and he made it work. Do you know what I mean? He made it work. So as a fighter, he put himself there to make it work. And I think a lot of fighters are going like, well, I want this. Figures don't weigh up. They can't. They don't calculate. Do you want to take less? No, I can't take less. I'll just wait out. It's like, really, like, that fighter should say, like, if that is your dream, then, and you're so convinced that you win it, there's much more money down the line. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of the time people don't, they don't see it like that. They don't take the right opportunities, and they don't get themselves in the right positions. And I think, like, Rich has got plenty of ability. He ticks all the boxes, but something's going on, because he's not fought for a world title yet.
Interesting. I like this. It's a completely different take. I really want to probe on this. I want to dig deep, but we're gonna move on, because I've got to speak about young Adam Azim. And the thing about Adam, and I was speaking to Spencer about it, is Spencer was saying, he's going to beat my record. It was fight number 11 for me. It's going to be fight number 10. We talk about strategizing and managing Adam. Are we pushing him? Are you guys pushing him at the correct pace, or do you think that sometimes it might be going a bit too fast, too far, too quickly?
Not necessarily, because the European title is just a title, in the sense that, yes, it's a very prestigious title, but Frank Petterjan, if it wasn't for the European title, I fancy this fight. I think it's a very good fight. It's a good learning fight. He's tough. He forces the pace. He's a short southpaw, so it's going to be quite tricky. He's got the experience. So, like, just take that all away. Like, the title's just the icing on the cake. Do you know what I mean? It's just, like that's all that is, really. I mean, obviously, Sky want to bill it as, like, he's breaking records, and which is true. That's what happens. But like, just in terms of, like, Adam Azim versus Frank Petterjan is a fight that we would like as the development of Adam Azim. It just so happens that it's for a European title, and there's potentially some other great fights afterwards for us at that sort of level. Do you know what I mean? And that's where you do your learning. You only do your learning when you find when your ability gets found out. Do you know what I mean? Like if you got a guy that's a freak of nature, like, Adam might blitz out Frank Petterjan, and then he might box Enoch Paulson, or that sort of guy, and blitz them. So, okay, well, he's not going to learn until he finds an ability.
Get the
exactly. Just even if he knocks them out, but in the process, it's like Josh Taylor versus Victor Postol. That was one of our most important fights in terms of the development. Him versus Ohio Davies was not necessarily a learning fight. He got a lot of confidence within his ability to take a shot from that. He got a lot of confidence in the ability to deal with, like, someone actually thinking it, telling him he's crap, and getting face to face and having a big confrontation before and weigh-ins and stuff. That's another box tick. But when it comes to, like, ability, he wasn't tested in a Hara Davis fight. He was tested in Victor Postol fight, and then it stood him in good stead going into the Baron check where he wasn't really tested, but he was tested in a Prograis fight. So like, those are really important boxes to tick for us as managers and coaches that are looking after his career. So Adam wants to go home, I think. So
finally then, all the best for Adam.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I just need to quickly ask you, Caroline Dubois, when can we see young Caroline out? One of my favourites.
Yeah, we were going to get her out before the end of the year, but now we're going to get her out early next year. So whether it's on the Jan 20 or for the Feb card, so we're working towards one of them. And it's going to be interesting because we're going to see how Katie Taylor fares next weekend. Yeah. If she loses again, is she going to vacate? Does she want to go back down to lightweight? And for us, Caroline's the IBO world champion, but she wants the major belts. And I think, if Katie has ambitions of going back down, we're going to be putting pressure on the governing bodies to be making her mandatory of quite a few. And whether that's down to Katie to say, all right, I'm going to take that challenge, or I'll vacate that belt, either way, it's going to be good for Caroline Dubois. So our sights are firmly set on taking over the lightweight division for her. And I think, she's 100% going to be the next face for sure.
People say I'm toxic, and honestly, I don't care.